Hi, and welcome to the Arizona Daily Star Opinion Page Reader Chat. I'm Sarah Garrecht Gassen, the opinion editor for one more day at the Arizona Daily Star. We are here to welcome Curt Prendergast, who is the incoming opinion editor of the Star, and to I just want to say this is going to be my last reader chat as opinion editor, and I just want to say thank you to everyone before we even get started. Sarah, can you tell us how to join the conversation?
Yes, so please feel free to raise your virtual hand today. If you're on a PC, you'll click on reactions and click raise hand. If you're on an Apple device, you'll probably see 3 dots somewhere on your screen, and that's the more button. And then you can click your name and click raise hand. Please also feel free to take advantage of the chat. And whether you have a question for Curt or for Sarah, feel free to raise your hand or put it in the chat. Or if you just want to say goodbye to Sarah and just do a personalized goodbye, that's what we're here for today. So please feel free to participate.
Excellent. I wanted to say I see many familiar faces, some new faces, and I also see Jonathan Hoffman, who is our one of our regular local contributors. So just wanted to say, I don't know that we've had you as part of the reader chat before, Jonathan, but I'm glad you're here. So Sarah, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, so like I said, if you have questions, please feel free. But let's just kind of start out, Sarah. I know that you did a little bit of a write-up in the paper, but that was just, what we could fit on the pages. So kind of give us a little recap, how long you were here, remind us where you're headed and maybe what you're going to miss about Tucson most. And tears are okay because we get it. Tucson is a huge place to miss.
There is. Well, I arrived in Tucson for the first time in 1989. I came on a church youth group trip into Mexico, working on planting chiltepines, actually, on a ranch in Mexico. And I fell in love with Tucson and came back for college in 1990 and stayed. I never really went back for the summer or for extended periods of time. Started at the Star in 96, and have been a news assistant. I was the person who opened mail in the features department for a little while. I was also the person who called the movie theaters to find out what the movie times were going to be for the next week. And heaven help you if you mess that up.
Don't mess with movie times or comics in the paper. Those are #1 lessons.
Yeah. So from there, they moved me to work at the Northwest office, where I covered the Oro Valley Town Council, Marana Town Council, Amphitheater Public Schools, Flowing Wells School District, and Marana School District. That was a weekly publication. After a few years there, I moved down to the main plant, the main newsroom, to cover the U of A. And I've been covering education in one form or another ever since. I've worked in the features department. I've written for every desk. And in 2008, I started in the opinion section, the editorial section. And that was always my goal. It's what I did when I was in high school at the school newspaper. And here I am as opinion editor. And it was my goal since back then. And I'm really thrilled to have been able to be a part of the Tucson community for all of these years.
I know, speaking for myself, I've loved having you as a boss. I could not ask for a better boss. Curt, you have big shoes to fill, but I think you'll fill them. I know you'll fill them. So we'll get into introducing Curt, but Sarah, how would you explain what you did for a living when you go somewhere else? How would you kind of capsize being the opinion editor, how would you explain that to someone?
That is a really good question because, yeah, my career has been like 3 tracks all at once. Being a journalist, being an opinion editor is basically kind of guiding the community conversation and trying to build a sense of community and support good works that are being done and call out wrongdoing when that happens. Basically, my approach to journalism has always been to shine light on right doing and wrongdoing and to connect. So that's sort of what I do and have done in the opinion department. So yeah, but it is an odd job because it's talking to a lot of people, hearing a lot of people who are angry with you or angry about other things. People feel connected, and that's really important.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of people realize, especially maybe when you're not in the news business, Sarah is one of the kindest, just considerate people of other people, animals, creatures alike. But in the opinion pages, there's a lot of preconceived ideas of who we are personally, and people can get very unkind with their words. And I know this is something that, we on the team experience on a daily basis, but I know you definitely have as well. And so I'm sure you won't miss that side of the job.
I won't. Although, people who I do sort of not enjoy, but I find it interesting when people decide they know who I am and what I believe and all of that, enough to call me names or decide they can characterize my point of view or just it's interesting. It's good to be feel like people know you and connect, but it's also interesting what they assume about you based on their own political and outlook without actually ever talking to you.
Yeah, very true. So I know you reached your goal in becoming opinion editor, which you said you wanted, but what is something that you're most proud of your time here, especially as editor? I know you've had your hands in so many things. I kind of have some ideas of what they might be, but tell us what are things that you're most proud of your time here on the opinion pages?
I am most proud. I think it boils down to helping people in Tucson, in our community, get to know other people and other ideas and life experiences of people that they'll probably never run into in real life. I think helping that conversation, helping people understand that, yeah, we all have our own experience, we all have our own point of view, but life is very different for different people. The working with the preschool promise project, getting public preschool scholarships funded to the tune of at least $11 million in Pima County for next year has been huge. That's sort of amazing that actually happened. And I'm thrilled to have been a part of that and help in any way I could. I also think that this time I spent at Walter Douglas Elementary School in the Flowing Wells School District, when I wanted to help people understand as much as possible what education and school is like in a really high poverty neighborhood, because we all went to school in one form or another. We all drive past schools and assume we know what goes on there, and we don't, because every single person's school experience is very different, even if you went to the same school. And education today looks very little like what it did many years ago, if only because schools are expected to not only educate kids, but feed them and help keep them safe and meet so many other community needs. So I spent most of a spring working as a volunteer at Walter Douglas Elementary School and reporting and just becoming part of that community so I could write about it from the inside. And so I'm very proud of the reporting and the stories that came out of that, because I think people need to know that things aren't how they experience them. And then I stayed on as a volunteer and read with adorable first graders who, if you have a little person like that, my favorite question is always, what does the tooth fairy look like? and how do they get around? Because every kid has a different answer, and it's just spectacular.
I would, yeah, I'd be excited to hear the responses to that. I'm sure they're very varied. So we have so much more we can ask you, Sarah, but let's introduce Curt a little bit so we can get you and part of the discussion. So welcome, Curt, not only today, but just in general.
Oh,
thank you.
So I know you did a little introduction about yourself in the paper, but if you could go ahead and just kind of, tell us a little bit about yourself, how long you've been here in Tucson, what you've been reporting on. I mean, most of us are familiar with your writing in Tucson, but for those that aren't, so just give us a little introduction of yourself.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, so I did write the column. That was kind of like an intro to me for everybody. Yeah, so I came to Tucson in late 2006, and I started grad school at the U of A pretty shortly after that. I lived down in Nogales from 2011 to 2015. Yep, I lived on Walnut Street. And I came back to Tucson to work at the Star in 2015. And so, like I said in the column, I've covered just a wide array of stuff. And most recently, I've done the border. And one taking over for Sarah, I think she has done a wonderful job, and I really, really appreciate like the warmth of the voice from the opinion pages in the Tucson community. And as much as possible, I want to continue doing that. I also feel like we are living in a very, very interesting time, and I would like to be a reasonable voice amid the chaos. I can talk pretty intelligently about the border, and I have been, for the last couple of days, I've been working with letters to the editor and the guest opinions, and it is very exciting to do. It's so nice to see like what readers have to say about reporting, about things going on in the world. Most of my feedback for the last forever has been emails about stories that I've written that are either I am way to one side, or I forgot to say something very important. Sometimes it's appreciative, but for the most time it's these very like pointed just at like me and the stories. It's so nice to see that there are all these people in Tucson who are paying attention to all these different things. And I really appreciate that I have to like look things up, when I'm going through the, kind of fact checking things, and I'm learning a lot. So I'm very excited about this, and I look forward to hearing from all of you and from everybody in Tucson about what you want the opinion pages to be, what we could do better. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Thank you, Curt. And so you touched a little bit on that, but do you have any ideas for, future plans or changes or just anything in that area?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the participants right here, and there are 54 people. And that's like a movement, that's a lot of people. So I'd like to continue with that. I also, I would like us to use our YouTube page more in some way. I haven't figured out how to do that exactly. But I think it's really valuable, like when we, interview candidates, things like that, if you can just like see it easily. I would love to have some, interview reporters about stories they've written. So I would really like to expand the YouTube, but we got to figure out exactly how to do that. We have a Facebook page. I would like to have that be, more, robust to build on that. Yeah, those are the things that I'm thinking about, but I would love to hear any ideas you have about what we should do.
And so what are the best ways for people to reach out to you?
It would be by email. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter a lot. So I can put in my email address here.
Yeah, that'd be great in the chat there.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking one thing that we kind of get feedback a lot on is the difference between opinion pages, columnists, and, you know, news reporters. Can you and Sarah kind of speak to what are the opinion pages? When we have an opinion article by Sarah or by Curt, is it your opinion? Is it the editorial board's opinion? You know, kind of just maybe explaining a little bit of the differences, because I think sometimes there's a little bit of confusion there on those lines.
Can I, me to go?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so this is a really big topic. This is a good one. And this is something I would like to talk a lot about in columns, like the media literacy. I think reporters do a great job of explaining things, but they do a terrible job of explaining what they do and how it works. For example, I think there are people, when you read like a Washington Post story and it has an anonymous source in it, I think that there are people who believe that the source is anonymous, like the reporter doesn't know who that person is, but they absolutely know who that person is. They just can't put their name in the paper. And so there's all those things I really like to talk about. And so from the news reporting side is you're very much bound by, you know, the facts, like what are the most important things that you can say about this subject. And the idea is that you're always trying to be as objective as possible. You're trying not to inject your bias. But, you know, we are all human beings. And so it does happen, but the discipline is to like minimize it as much as possible. With opinion is much more, I think you get to the point a lot faster. You just lose the power of the factual reporting. But opinions are great because they allow you to if you can trust the opinion writer, you trust their analysis in their mind, then you can read what they say about what's going on in the world. And you can think, all right, this person thinks that's interesting. I can kind of trust their judgment, but they are doing their best job of, they're not going to, if they're reputable, they're not going to use anything that's false or anything like that. But they are just giving you their take on the facts as they are. So it's kind of, in my mind, the reporting has this power because you are in these limitations of as much objectivity as possible. But the opinion, you read those and it allows you just get to the point of it so much better, as far as I can tell. Now, Sarah, if you have other thoughts.
I think it's important to remember that, as Curt said, you know, you can't be a good opinion journalist without being a good journalist first. And that opinion is much more than just saying, I had a thought, that you really do have to do the reporting and get into it and really think things through. And I think there's also more of an opportunity to, well, just speaking for myself, you know, going to Oro Valley Town Council meetings for several years, I can attest that many times at about 11 p.m. in an Oro Valley Town Council meeting, I would think, why don't you just do this? You know, in my head, like, this is clearly the answer. On the opinion side of things, you can say, here's an idea, why don't you try this? And so that is something that I think speaks to, you know, the power of reporting, but also having the bigger picture, because you're putting stuff in context. Context is a big thing.
So then throwing in that other layer of, let's say, like our paper, we're familiar with Tim Steller being a columnist. So where does he fall in with reporter, opinion pages, columnists? Where does that fit in?
Well, he's both, right? That's a kind of unique situation he has there. So I think what is it? He digs into the facts and tells you what he thinks about it, I think is his like tagline.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, so he's out there, he's doing a ton of reporting, you know, of like traditional reporting, and he just tells you what he thinks about it. I think the difference would be between what he does and just pure, like what I do now is I think that he does a lot more reporting than I will do. I'm going to do some, but his seems to be much more grounded in the reporting with just like a layer of opinion on top of it. I don't know if Sarah, if that's a mischaracterization or not.
No, I would say the Metro columnist position traditionally in newspapers is which is what Tim Stellar is to do the reporting, offer some analysis, but it's much more day-to-day. It's not really necessary looking at the long view, like you might find in an editorial or on the opinion pages. Yeah, it's a fine distinction that's, and it's more the Metro columnist personality. Like if you think of well-known Metro columnists from papers over the years, it's much more, you know, that person specifically because you see them every day or several times a week. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. I think it's kind of good to distinguish, you know, what the opinion pages are, you know, what their focus really is. Let's see. Norma has a question about if you could explain maybe a little further about the editorial board and their opinions versus like your own personal columns. And then like also further explaining like the endorsements we just had, you know, the Star's opinion stances and how that is decided, how that happens.
Absolutely. If you, so there are there are two main avenues for institutional or Star opinion. The editorial board is made up of John DiOrlando, our president and publisher, Jill Jordan Spitz, who's our top newsroom leader, and the opinion editor, which is now Curt. And David is part of, and Sarah are part of the opinion team, but they're not on the editorial board. And what the editorial board does is decide what the institutional position will be on candidates, on propositions for endorsements, but also, you know, we took a stand early on in the pandemic saying Doug Ducey needed to get his act together and close things down. And so it's more of, people say, oh, it's anonymous, it's not signed. Well, the people's names on the editorial board are right above the, or on the masthead of the page. So, and the thing there is, if I'm writing the editorial, or if Curt's writing the editorial, that's reflecting the consensus or the decision of the editorial board. A publisher can say, we're just writing this opinion, and then you have to do that. Fortunately, at the Star, we haven't really had a couple instances over my time there, but not anything significant. And John DiOrlando is very informed, but he's also not the kind of publisher to just say, you must do this. So, which is great. So it might be that I, as one of the writers, or as someone who writes as part of the editorial board, I will write an opinion based on that decision, what they decide. But then if you see someone's face next to their piece or a byline, that means that is only their point of view as an individual. So that is the difference.
So normally, like in practical, like with the endorsements that just happened, we kind of opened that up to the public, versus in the past, we would have had a meeting in the boardroom. It would have been the editorial board and those, you know, constituents, you know, that are running for whichever ward or whatever on either side of a proposition. The discussion would happen. And then after that discussion, the board makes their decision of what they're endorsing or what their opinions are, and then that gets written.
Yeah.
Okay. All righty. So I have a question here from Dee Maitland. Would you like to unmute yourself and maybe ask that, Dee?
I'm I'm thinking it's becoming, because of like Fox News and MSNBC, there's a really blurry line now between what is actually reported, what is news, and what is opinion. And I'm wondering how you do the difficult task of sorting it out, because we still see, letters to the editor come through, even though there's umpteen million proofs that it was a big lie or that it was a fraud. And yet you're still seeing things coming through, even though it's not true. And I'm just wondering how you deal with that.
We don't publish things that say that Biden didn't win. We'll print letters that refer to other people believing that and saying that it's wrong. But we're very careful about not perpetuating things like climate change is a hoax, or Trump really won, or that the coronavirus is a hoax. We're very careful about not, because you would hope that people would say, oh, well, I'm reading this and how could someone believe that? But what happens is if it's published by a credible source like the Arizona Daily Star, people think, oh, that must be true, or it lends a sense of credibility. And so we're very careful about not perpetuating that. Although other places, freely just say whatever the heck they want. And cable news is its own brand of lunacy sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for what you've done.
And also, I think a lot of communication happens even on the letters to the editor page among our team. There's a way of someone saying something that's an opinion, or there's a way of stating something as fact. So there's a lot of, how does this read? Am I reading this the right way? Am I understanding it right before it goes to print? So there's a lot of discussion that's happening, even just on one letter sometimes, because we want to include as many as we can. And so we spend a considerable amount of time fact checking all of these and, using all of them that we can in print.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have anything further to add to that, Kurt, or that pretty much
No,
covered it?
I mean, I just like as a kind of general observation about the problem. You can use Fox and MSNBC as like examples, but from what I see as a reporter is you can write a story and then it just gets sent through the internet and it gets referred to and kind of picked up. You see a lot of reporting that is like, it's not really reporting, it's like referencing reporting and then just talking about it, but it comes under the banner of something that looks like a news organization. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with this, but it's like the ecosystem has like, the news ecosystem has some people who are like creating news, who are actually going to the meetings, actually calling people and all that. And then there's just layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of kind of derivative stuff that isn't anything and doesn't really add much to the conversation. So I am very sympathetic to the news consumer because it is very, very difficult to navigate news right now. There's just so much out there that just isn't great. So.
Sounds like a good op-ed.
Yeah.
All right, Isla, I see you have your hand raised if you'd like to unmute and share your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. I'm afraid, Sarah, that you walked right into something I wanted to talk about that also would apply to the editorial board and possibly the opinion page, I think most likely. You walked into it when you said that your reactions were don't mess with the comics. And since Fitz is here and you're here and the opinion page people are here, my plea is this: haven't your readers suffered enough? Can't we get non sequitur back? It's better drawn.
That is actually
drawn, funnier and more apt, and we could dump rubes, which doesn't apply. And what happened was, and I would not have known it except I read it on the opinion page, that the editors decided arbitrarily after Wiley did something very inappropriate in the fine print that I would have overlooked completely on his page, to dismiss him forever. I
So-
think he's not suffering, we're suffering. It's time for a little mercy on your readers. Can't we please get Wiley back? I used to clip his stuff and put it on my church bulletin board because it always had something good to say. If you have time, I'll read you one that's one panel from
we really
know-
don't.
May 3rd, 2018.
You know, Isla, we appreciate your comment, but that is actually something that needs to be directed toward Jill. And I do remember when we had Jill on previously that you had brought up that subject. So I can put in, Jill's email if you'd like to contact her again about that. But that's, not something we have decision over. Unfortunately, that's above our pay grade. So Carl, I see you have your hand raised. If you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and share.
Yeah, hi. Just thought be interested in hearing Sarah and Kurt's thoughts on the current state of local journalism and in the country, the gutting of local newsrooms. And, like Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local. So how do we continue to shine the light on this and keep people informed? Thank you.
Kurt, you want to go ahead?
All right, yeah, so yeah, we're in the middle of a long trend of the gutting of the local journalism, and there are going to be more and more news deserts popping up all over the country. When I was a kid, I grew up in Indiana, and I remember that feeling of reading the paper, and it seemed to be all about like New York or LA, and I think the people, what was the term, the Trump safaris, I think is what they called it. In the post 2016 election, of having New York Times reporters and Washington Post reporters go to Arkansas or whatever, and hang out at a diner and talk to people. And so I think like it's been years and years and years where I think that the national conversation has overlooked like 40 states. And the reason I mentioned that is I would love it if we could have like local and regional news outlets in Montana and Wyoming and wherever that are telling their stories, and those stories are coming up into the national conversation, rather than it just seems like there's something happens and then everyone globs onto it. But this is more of like what I want us to do. I don't have a great solution for you. But we need to have all these little outlets all over the country telling the story of the place over and over again. I do see some promising moves in, online journalism, where you can have like very low cost outlets pop up, and they can have a handful of reporters and they can do a passable job of covering an area. But the sensation I've had for years now is that we are just so completely outgunned. It's not only that newsrooms are smaller or disappearing, the staff for public relations for government agencies and companies is just exploding. So like the Border Patrol Tucson sector, for example, they probably have like a dozen agents dealing with the public right now. They have like an operation, and it's like that with a lot of different agencies. And so the public relations side of it gets pumped out to the public just as much as like the kind of critical news side gets pumped out of the public. So we just need more. We need more reporters and more news outlets everywhere. I guess that's my explanation there.
And I would second everything Kurt just said. Yeah.
Let's see. Kent is asking about Doonesbury, asking about the future of Doonesbury. I don't think there's anything happening one way or the other, but maybe I'm unaware. Can we speak to anything about that?
I don't think Kurt, you don't have any plans to change Doonesbury, do you?
I like Doonesbury. I think we keep it going.
People like it.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, great. Well, let's see. Fitz, why are you so quiet today? This is like out of character. I'm sure you have something to contribute today.
I'd like to tell two stories. The first story comes from the fact that my mouth is oftentimes far ahead of my brain. And on one occasion, many moons ago, I said in the presence of Sarah Gasson describing an individual I had seen. I said this was a, quote, wheelchair-bound person with great tender moral authority. She first gave me that look, and then in the kindest fashion possible, pointed out that I was dehumanizing this individual by putting their humanity second. And it's a lesson I have never forgotten. And I proudly repeat that story with as much humility as I possibly can. Sarah Gassen, you are a terrific editor, not only of language, but also of the soul. And as far as language, I want to say for many years, Sarah Gassen has been my editor. Artful with a scalpel and a chainsaw. And this morning I was thinking that Elvis died because no one told Elvis, no, put down that cheeseburger, Elvis. But thankfully, on many occasions, Sarah said to me, put down that cheeseburger persuasively, and saved me time and time again from myself. And for that, I am exceptionally grateful to you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think we all can have a story about edits or how Sarah, as our boss, just she has a very kind way of bringing things to your attention that maybe are better done another way. So let's see, there's a familiar face to me. Renee, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself and share.
I just wanted to say that welcome to Curt. I'm gonna try to be Sarah here. I'm gonna try to do what Sarah would do. Sarah would go, welcome Curt, and I'm so glad that you're here, and I really look forward to working with you. And it's going to be great. And I love your ideas, especially about news literacy. And then she would say goodbye to the other person. Because she would just be, that's how Sarah is. But I do sincerely welcome Curt. And I look forward to seeing what you say on the opinion pages about the border, because that's such a complex topic. But I'm going to miss Sarah so much. And I will keep in touch and everything, but I knew Sarah not just as my editor of my opinion columns, but also as a colleague at the School of Journalism. And I was, for 10 years, I was either the academic advisor or the career counselor and internship coordinator for the School of Journalism. And I would see Sarah as I'd leave the building, and I'd always wave at her in her class. But the main thing was that I saw Sarah's influence on the students that had Sarah's classes, but especially when they had advanced news reporting with her, they learned what they were supposed to learn. And the students who went through the apprenticeship program got jobs because they learned what they were supposed to learn. She's a phenomenal teacher, and I really worry about, there's a loss for Tucson when she leaves the editorial page, but I am really concerned about the School of Journalism because what she did there for so many years as an adjunct professor just is irreplaceable. And I do worry about that, Sarah, not to guilt you there, but I do worry about it. And I hope you can do that where you go, where you're headed. I hope there's some place that you can do that, because you're a phenomenal teacher. And I'll miss you.
Miss you too.
I think it's okay to throw in a little guilt there. Like, we've been doing it, I think, on a daily basis. Telling her we love her, but you know that, we can't believe she's leaving.
I have a question for Curt. I really enjoyed your introductory autobiographical column, but from my vantage point as a Yoda, you are so young, yet you had done so much. I was hoping that here you might list all the different jobs you've held
Oh, man.
and where you have traveled in the very few years you've been on the surface of this planet, you overachiever, you.
Well, they're not all achievements, All right, I will try this. All right, let's see here. So mowing yards for years with my brothers in Fort Wayne, Indiana, working at the Foster Park Golf Course, which is, I kind of got at that in the column, but I really cannot emphasize enough how special of a place that was. It's a municipal golf course, it's super cheap, it's right in town, everybody goes. Everybody went. The idea of golf as like the elitist country club thing, nah, this was like lots of people in tank tops, lots of like, having a good time out on the golf course. But I think that shaped me more than anything. I worked there for years when I was a teenager. And I saved that money and I paid to go to Argentina as an exchange student for a year. So the middle of my junior year, I went and lived in Argentina with the family of an Argentine guy who lived at our house the previous year. So I got to slide in and I got to be like, he was a very cool dude. And so I got to slide in and I was like, by association, cool in this little town in Argentina. And that was great. But yeah, and then I worked the student union in college. I went to Brazil in college. I lived in Sao Paulo and in Salvador da Bahia. I worked I know how to thread film, I worked at a drive-in theater and I had the spinning tables and I was sitting there watching when the credits were going down with the switch, ready to stop it off. I have seen some movies, Prisoner of Azkaban, the Harry Potter movie. I have seen that probably 400 times, something like that, because I was sitting there at the drive-in movie theater and was running. One of my favorite jobs was outside Philadelphia. I worked at TLA Video, Theater for Living Arts Video, which was an independent video store. And so I got to just interact with people. Kind of alluded to this in the column, but it was so good I like art in all its forms and to see how people consume it. And we had, I got to be the guide for people when they came in and they wanted to, they're following a director. They just want to see the biggest new blockbuster. They want to, just have something fun for the night. They got kids, they don't have kids. It's a whole thing. It was so fun. But I also worked at Cineplexes, all that type of stuff. I was the shop guy at a general contractor. So I have driven all over Philadelphia and Northwest New Jersey, driving tools and building materials to job sites. Let's see here. That gets me into my 20s.
Good grief. I was going to say, and you're what, 57?
Yeah. So I'm 40 years old now, so I'm not that young. As I say, my forehead has gotten bigger and bigger over the years.
We've got some shout outs for Philly in the chat.
Oh, really? Oh, that's cool. Great.
Awesome.
Yeah, so I have just done a ton of different stuff. I was in grad school at the U of A. I really, really, really liked working for the Nogales International. That was a very, very stressful job because I had to do like 8 or 10 stories a week, which is a grind. And for a lot of the time, I was the only reporter there. So it was, I think Kathy might have bordered on the absurd to see my byline on every story in the paper.
I think you've forgotten to add though, Curt, that you speak beautiful Spanish. So you're bilingual.
Well, I speak kind of ugly Spanish now and kind of ugly Portuguese. I had my day where I could speak very, very well, but it's fading. That's one of the things about living in Nogales is you use your Spanish every day just to get around the world. Whereas in Tucson, it's kind of there, but there's I don't know if anybody here speaks English and Spanish, but there's a very borderlands moment, right? Where when you are talking to somebody, you both speak both languages, there's like, if my Spanish is better than your English, then we speak Spanish. If your English is better than my Spanish, then we speak English. It's this very beautiful moment that happens all the time. Yeah, so I could babble on about myself for as long as you like, but I don't know if that's enough for our purposes.
What kicked you into journalism? What's wrong with you, man?
I mean, that's what journalism is, right? It's a bunch of misfits, we don't fit anywhere else in the world. So for me, it was, I do it, like reporting helps me sleep. Like I'm by engaging the world in this way, I can kind of start making sense of it. And then hopefully I help other people feel, like the world makes a little bit more sense. But I think it's really like, I just look out at the world and it's this vast, complex, chaotic place. And so I just feel like anything I can do to have it make more sense, I don't know, I really, really like that. And then also you get to write, which, you get to really like try to put a story together, and there aren't that many jobs that allow you to do that. So I very much enjoy being in that headspace of, you kind of inhale in this story, all these things people have told you, and then it kind of lives in you for either some hours, if it's a daily, or for days, if it's for Sunday, or for longer, if it's an enterprise piece. And then you get to like breathe it out into the world. And so there's kind of like an honor in that. And, I think writing by now should be easy, I think, but never is. It's just always it's always difficult, but it's a great challenge. And I love, after you've written it up, and if it comes out okay, there's just a really great feeling that, you can go back and read that months or years later, and it's like, it holds up, like it's a solid piece of writing. And so, yeah, that's my shtick.
Wow. And as interrupt, Sarah, didn't you start in high school? Weren't you a punk in high school?
I had bright pink hair or bright purple hair or no hair, except for bangs.
Or a little bit of half and half, if I remember right. There was like a shaved moment.
Yeah. I started, I grew up in a house that we had the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the St. Louis Globe-Democrat, the New York Times, Webster Kirkwood Times, and then there were another couple community newspapers, and didn't have a TV because my dad threw it out. And so I grew up reading newspapers. It just seemed to be, I was always nosy and curious and writing things down. So yeah, went to high school, was able to join the staff, and did it in college. And here I am. Yeah. I would like to point out Norma Coyle, who is one of our assistant Metro editors, who is marvelous. Norma, would you wave?
Oh.
And
thank you so much.
of course.
I have worked with Sarah for more than 20 years, and with Curt since he arrived here in 2015. And oh my God, we are so lucky to have both of you. Tons of talent and heart and brain power.
Thank you.
Very nice of you.
And Gabby Rico is here too. You'll recognize her byline on many real estate and business stories. So, oh, you're muted.
Hello, wonderful readers.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, there was a question about if I worked for the Tucson Citizen. That was the other paper in town, and I interviewed for an internship there in college and did not get hired. So their loss. Just kidding. Not that I've held on to sour grapes all these many years. Yeah.
But both Norma and I both worked at the Tucson Citizen.
You did very excellent work at the Tucson Citizen.
Thank you. Boo on them.
Well, the Star didn't hire me at first either. So,
well, boo on us.
Yeah. And Renee worked at the Citizen as well. Yeah. So, well, Dave, you look like you have another question.
I am not going anywhere near the subject of the beloved late Citizen.
Thank you, David.
You are so welcome. I grew up reading The Citizen rather than The Star. So I was surprise ending for my career. I mean, beginning. That's right.
So you had conservative parents.
The Master Sergeant.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. He enjoyed The Citizen, the columnist Don Shelley, and force feeding me Walter Cronkite every night.
Little bit of bitterness in that delivery there, Dave.
I'm good.
And
I'm
that's
good.
the way it was.
So,
Yeah.
Kurt, I know that you're officially the new editor starting, well, Saturday, I guess.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's Sarah's last day. But is there any little projects that you were finishing up on your old beat that you might tell us to look for?
Ooh.
Oh, is there, Norma? Do we have a project of some sort?
Yes.
So-
Yes, we do. November 4th online. And then every Sunday in November, Kurt and Alex Devoid, our data reporter, have an in-depth, important project on migrant deaths in the Southern Arizona desert.
And
And-
this has been
and-
months long.
I think it was a good idea by Kurt to break it up so that, because, a lot of times you get one of these massive projects in a newspaper and you say, oh, I really want to read this. I'm going to set it aside till I have time. And 2 weeks later, you've forgotten to go back to it. So the idea is, readers are busy, so spread it out. So it's not, so that it's a less daunting idea to sit down with a project. But I wanted to say also that the important thing about this upcoming project is that Kurt has, come up with suggestions for ways that we can help prevent these annual hundreds of deaths in our desert. And that's what's really makes it special.
Yeah, that was new for me. That's kind of we don't normally do that in journalism, but there is the strain of solutions journalism. I don't know if people ever hear about that, but I feel like that's the way of the future. So just like we did, we're presenting you with this fairly horrific reality, and we're kind of laying out this world so that you can understand it. We're telling you how it plays out, and then we are also trying to not just leave you with a sense of outrage, but now nowhere to direct it or anything. So it's kind of like the goal. One of my hopes is that people will read this, understand it. They'll see the things that we recommend, and then they can kind of go away from it thinking, we should do that, or we shouldn't, or we should do some variation of that, or this is going to work, or it's not. But just kind of keep thinking about it rather than just ending with like a sad anecdote, and then you just feel awful for the rest of the day. So yeah.
Exactly. And also, just really quickly, I wanted to say that Sarah was part of 2 solutions projects, at least in recent years, that did the same thing. One of them, she traveled to bases around the country when Davis-Monthan was facing the potential loss of its major mission, the A-10, and what we might be able to do as a community to help make sure that the economic importance of Davis-Monthan continued for us. And then secondly, on foster care, Sarah also traveled to several states to find out what was being done well, best practices in foster care as for institutions like states when they're managing foster care systems.
Yes. Thank you for pointing those out, Norma.
Sure.
Those
I
were-
love solutions projects.
And others are echoing that in the chat as well. I love the solutions journalism ones are saying. So obviously it's resonating with people. I think like what you said, Kurt, not only you're reading something about a horrible situation and then it ends normally. Whereas with solution journalism, it's like, yes, these horrible things are happening, but here's some ideas. Here's a way to make it better. And that's refreshing to end on maybe a somewhat positive note. Sarah,
Yeah,
did you have
and
something?
those suggestions come out of deep reporting, and deep understanding of the problems.
Yeah. Did you have something to add, Sarah? I saw you kind of waving when someone was talking, or
No, that was actually Ty Hudson, who was one of my students,
Hi.
was signing off, so I was waving to him.
Oh, okay, okay. Well, Kent, I see you have your hand raised if you'd like to unmute and share your thoughts.
Sure. A new feature, at least seemed new to me, was the page that had writings from religious leaders. And that's an area that interests me a great deal. And I thought having different views presented was enriching. And I was wondering whether that was considered part of opinion page, or what the history of that was in terms of how that developed and whether it will continue.
That is something that Sarah Brown came up with and is in charge of. Would you like to share a bit about that, Sarah?
Yeah, so the Keeping the Faith page that was running on Sundays in the Home and Life section, we just kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, we're discussing, people, needing hope and, positivity and, whatever your belief system is, just something positive and not necessarily the political side. We have other pages for that, but just about people's faith and whatnot. So we've definitely enjoyed that page. The submissions have been getting very slow, unfortunately. It's hard to, get someone to consistently, write something, on a regular basis. But as of now, we don't have intentions of completely stopping it. It's just that if we don't have enough to fill, a half a page or, something like that, then we might hold it for a week or whatnot. But as far as my knowledge, we're not completely stopping it. But if you ever have suggestions for, people that would like to contribute, please reach out to me and we'll give them all the information. So, well, I'm seeing so many in the chat, Sarah. I'm going to have to, when I export this, I'm going to just email you the chat so you can make sure and not have missed anybody's sentiments, because it's just a consistent, you helped encourage people to write that didn't feel like they could have the confidence to write, even if it was about very differing opinions than what they think the star might hold or what they feel you might hold. Just showing appreciation so much for you, what you've done for our community, and what you've done for them personally also, it looks like. But also lots of excitement for Curt. I think we can all see that Curt has so much energy and excitement, and he's got some ideas, but he also appreciates what's working and what's going. So I will finish off, but do either of you have any final words that you guys would like to share as we close out our chat today? Curt, do you want to maybe go first, and then we'll end on Sarah so we can have a full cry fest at the end.
That sounds good. Yeah, all I would say is, thank you for showing up to the reader chats. I don't get to talk like this, so I really appreciate, talking to you about that. And by all means, write letters to the editor, write guest opinions. If you feel passionately about something, put it into words, send it to us. Like, we want the conversation. So I just really encourage you to do that. And if you ever have conversations with other people who are waffling about whether they want to do it or not, tell them to do it. It's great. So I look forward to hearing from all of you.
Thank you, Curt. And go ahead, Sarah.
I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the past years at the Star, for your kindness and your ideas and your heart, and for just being you and reading, being part of the Star community, for being part of this group. It's been so important to me over the past year and a half. So while you can tell I cry easily, but I held out until like literally the last minute. So again, thank you. Okay.
Yours are okay, and we appreciate them because it's just another reminder of your passion. So thank you all so much for being here today. Just as a really quick preview, we are continuing our reader chats as far as I'm aware. I believe, Curt, can you confirm that? Yep, he's saying yes. So we have no plans to end them as of now. And next week, we actually have another guest from Literacy Connects. He's actually the executive director. Matt Tarver-Walquest will be with us. And so we're going to learn a little bit more about Literacy Connects. Sorry, I always say that wrong. We're going to learn a little bit more about their organization, what they do here in Tucson, but also maybe how we can be a part of it. Sarah was saying earlier about how much joy she got from reading to those little ones. We might be able to volunteer and do something similar to that. We'll find out next week. So we thank you all so much for being here, and we will see you next week. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you all so you can all say your own goodbye to Sarah.
Bye, Sarah. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah.
Take
Best
care.
wishes
Sarah.
for new
Bye,
adventures.
Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
Bye again.
Bye, Sarah.
Bye.
See you.
Thank you,
Hi, Sarah.
And thank you so much for all you've contributed.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Sarah. Stay in touch. Enjoy St. Louis.
I will. I will.
Miss you.
You.
All right, everyone, have a good rest of your day.